On today's session, we'll be talking about navigating AI. Now, AI and automation and other advancements are transforming both the enterprise and its risk functions. So they optimize operations, they also open up or amplify existing risks and create new ones. So today, I'm delighted to say I have two experts in the field, Samta and Sarah. And the first question I will pass on to Samta. The question is, let's level set and understand what AI is and what AI is not before we jump into the conversation.
Thanks, Damaris. And this is a very big question that we're solving for and talking to a lot of our clients on. What we wanted to highlight was the fact that AI has many components to it, but there are things that are truly not a part of AI. For example, when you think about robotic process automation, when you think about being able to program certain systems and or hard code certain systems to get the action that you want these systems to produce. Those things are not considered AI. When you're doing your KPIs, when you're doing analysis to say, how am I going to break this down by the state, by the region? What does it look like when you're looking at your products and trying to get insights on all of those? Just by descriptive analytics, we are not considering that as AI, especially for a part of the discussion today. However, I do want to spend some time talking through what is AI and also focusing in on generative pre-trained transformers and what has changed since November of 2022 that everyone is talking about AI now, to the extent that it has become a boardroom conversation. And we're having those conversations with our clients across the board. So artificial intelligence has many flavors to it, or different ways in which you can program and get the insights that you need. There's machine learning, which is a component of artificial intelligence. So think about artificial intelligence as the umbrella, machine learning as the subset, deep learning as a subset of machine learning. And then the generative pre-trained transformers are trained using the deep learning technique. Without getting too technical, because I'm sure no one wants those technical lessons today, the fact is that where I do want to draw your attention to, which I think is super important to note, is that artificial intelligence has been around since the 1940s. This is not new. We have seen this technology has been around in different ways, shapes and forms. We have seen many AI winters. What did change, and even deep learning since 2006, right? But what changed in November of 2022 were three things. One was the democratization of AI like we have never seen before. So for example, you no longer need to be a data scientist to play with AI. You can have ChatGPT on your phone and you can access this technology, get a lot of insights. The second thing that changed is the amount of investments that have gone in this field. There have been around 429% increase in the investments that have gone in AI. And the third thing is the emergent capabilities of this technology. So for example, just like the name suggests, generative, this technology can now generate text, video, as well as audio. So these three things have now made this front and center and has made risk such a huge topic related to AI.
Thank you for that in-depth explanation of what AI is. So let's talk about what are the risk considerations associated with artificial intelligence and AI in general. And I want Sarah to take that. Sarah, what are your thoughts? Can you share?
Let's start with something that is practical that everyone may be familiar with. Very recently, Taylor Swift, her image was hijacked, and someone leveraged generative AI to put her face on a body that is very explicitly inappropriate. And so we're going to start seeing deepfakes. It's actually one of the number one risks that the World Economic Forum has identified due to generative AI creating misinformation and disinformation. And so, how do you know what you're seeing is actually produced by the person? Is it the same person? Is it by AI? Is it fraudulent? We're also seeing an uptick on AI-generated frauds. Stories that I hear, such as a mother got a call from her daughter. I am in trouble. Can you please send money? Help me. And it turned out to be, someone trying to scam them, leveraging machine learning and also generative AI scraping data information from Facebook and Twitter. It learns how you speak, it learns how you write. It's scary. And then also we see that Amazon has started leveraging generative AI. It goes through all of the product reviews and summarizes good, bad reviews of the product recommendation. And so as the world opens up to AI, it's almost like you can't really trust what you're getting, and there needs to be a step of validation. AI is also used for decision making, such as banks creating loan applications and leveraging AI to decide who gets a car loan, who doesn't. And if AI is not trained in a fair and transparent manner, you could potentially have gender biases or biases based on which zip code you live in. And so those are some of the things that you really need to think through. Who has your data? Do you still own your data? How are you going to be misused, whether it's your image or your name, your ID? So those are some of the risks associated with AI.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. Now, the question for all of us here is, how do we best align our organization as well as our responsible AI strategy, or some strategy to manage the risks that Sarah just talked about? And so, Sarah, that's the next thing I want to talk about with you. What is the impact of global AI regulation? Where are these regulations, and how do they impact us as internal audit?
Yeah, this is such a new field. And so we're seeing regulations being developed and evolving every day. On January 29th, our administration just came out with a proposal that they want cloud companies to follow a similar set of rules as financial services on Know Your Customers to help continue to monitor AI evolution and whether that's going to pose a threat to our country. And so as we start looking at these regulations, we are starting to map out, such as the NIST framework, whether it's their risk management framework 1.0, or they're actually creating a consortium for companies and scholars and users to come together to establish a framework that can be used globally, so we have a single standard, very similar to the traffic rules that I mentioned earlier. And so I'm very proud to say that EY has been selected to join the consortium to help drive some of the standardization and governance of AI. We're also seeing the EU AI Act, following by the Digital Markets Act and Digital Services Act, that is trying to govern our digital place online. That's how we operate. We have our in real life persona, and we have an online persona. We're spending a lot of time leaving out digital footprints. These regulations are making sure that we're leveraging information and AI in a responsible and safe manner.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So these regulations, they will impact the way that we do our business. I want us to spend some time to talk about our responsible AI framework. This is a framework that we use. And I want Sarah to start here to talk about what is responsible AI as a framework, and how do we see internal audit functions or shops apply that?
We're having a lot of conversations jumping straight in on AI. And what I want to do is for us to zoom out a little bit, because AI isn't just a standalone isolated topic. So as you think about internal audit role and helping the company mitigate and monitor risks, it has a place in the overall enterprise risk assessment and risk management framework. Really understanding what is company strategy on AI, what's the short-term, long-term view, how do you deploy, how do you use, are you leveraging AI to compete in the marketplace, create business advantage? Are you using AI to protect? Cybersecurity is a key risk. What are you doing to protect your assets, your IP, your employees? And then ultimately, are you leveraging AI to drive the cost of compliance? And also, how do you comply with some of the AI regulations to make sure they're reliable, fair, and it's good for your employees? So as we think about responsible AI, there are a handful of stakeholders I want to address. One is regulators that we already talked about. So needing to comply with key requirements and standards rolled out by governing standard boards or the government. Another one is your customers. As a company, especially a public company, you have your fiduciary duty to your customers and key stakeholders. Okay? And then lastly, your employees. What are you doing to make sure they have the right access to information, upskill, leverage AI to be more efficient, more productive? And so, I want to kind of, once the company have the view of how do we think about AI in the broader organizational sense, based on the products that you use, based on the AI models that you leverage to gain efficiency, now we hone in on this responsible AI model with the 9 pillars. These 9 principles talks about how do you make sure your AI is accountable, is fair, is explainable, it protects your privacy. We're all very used to testing technology in the SOX world. You can actually baseline and benchmark, right? The code didn't change, you move on. Well, AI is different. You can't just code it and forget it. AI evolves on its own, especially generative AI. So how do you make sure you have controls in place to continuously control, monitor these 9 pillars?
Right. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Sarah, for giving us this broad view. Now, this is a framework. I want to bring this home a little bit. For example, how do we use this responsible AI framework to test bias, for example, Samta? How would you describe that?
Yeah, sure, Damaris. And look, the good and bad about AI is the fact that it gives us a lot of actionable decisions that we can make with the use case that we're solving for, right? However, the risks in AI can come across the entire life cycle of AI, starting from when you think about what use case do you want to build and develop. When you're designing that, you can have risks that pop up. You can have risks during the data gathering phase. You can have algorithmic risks and actually the usage risks. So when you're using it, what are the insights you're using, who's using it, what is really happening? We did touch a little bit upon the regulations that are coming, but I do want to drive home the other point as well, which is why should you be thinking about responsible AI and why bias and fairness and the other principles are so important to think about right from the design phase. So if the regulatory piece wasn't enough, there is a lot of reputational loss that companies can face if they do not have the responsible AI principles in place that they're aligning the entire organization to. And these principles have to be laid out and validated not only in the C-suite, but to the data scientists that are actually developing it, whether they're ML engineers now, prompt engineers now. What does fairness mean when a CEO talks about it, when a data scientist talks about it, right? How do you bridge that gap is where all of this comes to light and is very, very important. We have seen companies in the news that none of us want our companies to be in the news for, specifically bias. And the bias angle is very important to be checked for, and a lot of controls need to be in place. Very strong governance needs to be in place because this can come in with the data. It can come in with unconscious bias that we have as human beings when you're using AI to make decisions. And it can also come in as you're building these algorithms. So we have to have a way to not only do it when you're building it, but once the algorithms are built, there are many data drifts, algorithmic risks that come along with it. And we have to continuously monitor it to make sure that these things are not coming to surface anytime during the life cycle of AI.
Yeah, I have an example. Yeah, I have an example I like to add. So there's a case study that a bank was leveraging AI to assign credit scores, and that credit score would then use to increase or determine credit limit. And so this husband and wife who have a joint business apply for credit, and the husband got 10 times more credit than the wife. And they were really puzzled because they had owned the business together. They basically have exactly the same background, the same information is provided on the application. The only thing they could think of is gender bias, but they didn't think they had that in the algorithm. They tested all that. And so they decided to do some digging and figure out where it went wrong. They then realized that it's not until the 1970s that women in the US were allowed to have their own bank account. And because data just is new, there's more data for male banking versus female banking, that it created bias. So things like that, as Samta mentioned, as companies design their AI model, looking at the intended outcome and do the testing, those are the activities you need to think through. And what we're starting to see is the AI governance committee at companies being formed. And that committee is comprised of a cross-functional executives, and sometimes including inviting someone outside of the company that has nothing to do with the product to sit in and really create that diversity of thoughts to challenge whether there are unintended biases, as well as unconscious bias that is part of that AI design.
Right. And so implementing this framework that focuses on these 9 pillars across the life cycle, as you've both mentioned, and continuously monitoring these, this would be a best way for us to implement AI responsibly and drive confidence in the modules that we are. Thank you very much for your comments. It comes to this point where, okay, this is EY's responsible AI framework, but how would we implement this at a client? How have clients done this in the past? And I want to give each of you an opportunity to talk about it. Can you tell us, Samta, an example of where you have implemented responsible AI and how you did that?
So we are, as you know, we've been talking about this, there is a lot of regulation, there's reputational loss. And so we're working with a lot of our clients to help them understand what do these principles really mean to them as an organization. And there are different areas where organizations could agree among the 9 that you saw. And full disclaimer, these principles might change even as we speak because the risks that come with generative AI, and I'm going to call all the other AI narrow AI for the discussion that we're having today, but the generative AI risks are heightened than the narrow AI risks. So what we do need to make sure is while we have these principles, we are also keeping up to speed on the new ones that are coming. NIST is working on developing their framework, which we are helping them with. And there are regulations and the different departments that are coming out along with these principles. So we have to keep that in mind. So when we work with our clients on that, we have to set up a very agile setup so that they can change with the changing requirements. I'll give you a specific example of a utility company that we're working with. And what the thing that they were struggling with was that they had many ideas that the business had got forth and said, we see tremendous, our use case gets implemented. We have a really nice hub, which is in their case, the IT department. And we have all these spokes where the businesses are coming in and giving us these beautiful ideas that we need to do. Now, what changed, though, is when historically, I used to work on AI strategy, you would think about timeline, you would think about business value. And when both of them mash, we would go, right? Now, with this, there is a big risk element that has come into being with generative AI. So what we did with this client was we helped them with a few things. One, we helped them truly understand what should the governance body look like? How many should you have? Who are the people who should be involved? What kind of RACI should each of these members have? What are the decisions that they should take? What is the duration they should meet for? What are the objectives of these meetings? So we set them up to do that. And then we also help them understand in the use cases that are coming in and in the things that are moving through the life cycle of AI, which is when you have established business value, you have looked at risk, you've identified what could happen, and you're moving it to production, how do you still make sure that your AI is audit ready whenever that might come to you as a company? Do you have a solid inventory of the models that you have built or are planning to build? Do you know where the data that is feeding these models come from? Where do these models sit? How are you monitoring the, I'm going to get a little technical, but the outliers in a sine curve on these models? What are the decisions that you're going to make based on this? How are you going to train your employees for that? What are the policies and procedures that you're going to put in place so that you are following the principles that we laid out? So how can you, if you do not declare to your employee that you are using AI to make certain decisions, there have been studies that have shown that that can actually negatively impact the company. Employees want to work for companies that are transparent. Customers always wanted this, but this is the latest study that has proved that we want to do it across for our employees as well as customers. So how do we do all of that? And we help them set up a complete impact assessment for being responsible in their AI and how that's going to truly affect their end customers and their employees if something were to go wrong. So that is kind of how we brought this all to life with this one company.
Thank you. Thank you so much for bringing that to life for us. What we're going to do next is talk about, what if I have bad data? Is my data AI ready? And Samta, I would like you to take this question first as well. What's your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, so AI honestly has become this new shiny toy, and generative AI even more shinier. We all want to run towards it. Nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. However, we have to keep in mind that AI is garbage in, garbage out. Data is a very, very, very key element of whether you use narrow AI or generative AI. It's a very key element to make sure that you're minimizing risks that come along with AI. For example, with generative AI can hallucinate. What that really means is that it can give you answers that are incorrect, and it can give those answers to you with a lot of confidence, including links that it can cite. A lawyer got in trouble for this, believe it or not, and got in the news. So we all can be victims of that. The reason I bring that up is because hallucinations cannot be completely eliminated. But now we have really, really, really good ways of minimizing hallucinations if you chunk the data right, and if you give the generative AI models data that it can read from, refer to, and if this is good data. It's similar with narrow AI. The challenge, and as we talk to our clients, the big thing that comes up when you talk about your data being ready is the fact that what are different components that we need to think about? Do we need to get all of our data in one place before we can use AI? I don't think that's the answer. It's like boiling the ocean. In my opinion, we should think about what is the 20% of data that's going to drive 80% of value for our organizations. Trying to solve for all data before you embark on your AI journey and start seeing true value from AI could potentially put our companies in the back of the curve. And I'm sure none of us want to do that. But as you think about this, there are certain things that become very important, like data governance. How are you governing your data? Who are your data stewards? Who are your business owners? Who are your IT custodians? What does that look like? Do you have a strong strategy that you're aligning your data to? So that, of course, there's a business strategy, there's an enterprise strategy, where you need to move, what you need to do. That should be followed very closely with your AI strategy, your data strategy, and your technology strategy. So are all of these aligned? Are you truly solving for things that are needle movers and aligning your data to it versus the other way around? How do you think about your data quality? How are you going to measure it? Do you have scalable architectures? Do you have master data management, at least good enough to start embarking on this journey? And how are you looking at the risks that come in? So those are different elements that it's really good to think about when you're embarking on this journey.
Hey, one thing I want to add is, we see AI train on data, just internal data within your company. You don't have to go straight to ChatGPT. You could use your internal data for search and summarization, or knowledge extraction, curation for management reporting. And one of the things that we're seeing is, if companies are already struggling with leveraging data analytics because you are having trouble identifying a single source of truth, and data may be fragmented, disconnected, it's hard to get it out of different systems, then that will make your data not ready for AI. And so, to Samta's point, garbage in, garbage out. So, number one, similar to what your external auditors would be asking you for SOX, how do you know this is complete and accurate? You need to ask the same questions. Externally, you may be leveraging third-party solutions to train your generative AI to do certain function. But where is a third party leveraging data to train their AI from? Reddit and Twitter X? You would have a lot of noise in there, and then it's not that data you need. And so data provenance it's a word or a phrase that you'll hear a lot more. Going back to understanding, where did you get the data from to train AI? Are you infringing on IP rights? And so those are some of the things that you need to think through as you think about How are you leveraging AI? Is it for decision-making, customer-facing, and what procedures you need to do to make sure your data is ready? Is it internal-facing for operational efficiency? And you have different level of controls and risks that you need to manage.
Thank you very much. So the takeaway here is let's focus on the data that we want to rely on, the 20% that will give us the 80% of efficiency. And let's make that a single source of truth before we layer on AI. And that would make the confidence level of our AI significantly better. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Samta. Thank you, Sarah. This has been lovely.